Cool.
Looks good. All right. Welcome back. Another edition of the History Buffs, episode 9. We almost double digits. Producer RA?
I don't remember.
We'll go with it.
I think we are at 9.
Sure we are at 9.
Episode 9. At least we have fun. We're going to do something a little bit different tonight. We're going to start with a hopefully what's going to be a kind of a mini series talking about the Civil War, leading up to the Civil War. Do it for a couple weeks. No reason, just happens to be a coincidence that it's 2020 and it's an election year, and America's kind of going to shit. It looks like.
Looks like it's about to turn to a civil war, kind of.
Yeah, completely unrelated. Totally, yeah, not connected at all. Per usual, we are joined by producer RA.
Hello.
Austin from New London, and hashtag but don't ever jacket.
Ever jacket.
Ever jacket. Excuse me. Excuse me. So we're going to start a little bit before the Civil War. Obviously, history guys would like to do a long-winded intro to get us into the topic we're actually going to talk about. So we're going to talk about the Lincoln-Douglas debates, which is I'd say a widely underreported part of the intro to the Civil War. It's something that people you might have heard of. Obviously, Abraham Lincoln and Stephen Douglas were the two guys. One's a little more well-known than the other. But the debates themselves had a pretty big impact on the Civil War. So I'll talk about the lead up of the Civil War, the lead up to the Lincoln-Douglas debates, which are the Kansas-Nebraska Act. Before that, you had the Compromise of 1850 as well. So with the Compromise of 1850 and leading right into the Kansas-Nebraska Act of 1854, basically the idea was new states that joined the Union would address the issue of slavery through popular sovereignty, meaning basically it was the state's decision. If people wanted slavery, the majority rules essentially. If you wanted slavery, you'd get more votes. If not, if you want to be a free state, that would get more votes. Basically letting the states decide and kind of going from there. So does anyone want to jump in and talk about that a little bit and how that obviously made a huge impact in Kansas throughout the 1850s leading up toward the start of the Civil War?
Austin does.
I do.
I don't want to take all the wind out of the room.
Yeah, I mean, what was it, Bloody Kansas? There was so it was a territory that was trying to become a state at this time, and the state was really split between people who wanted it to make it a free state or make it a slave state. And so there was a ton of violence. And then the big thing that topped it all off was the John Brown raids, correct?
Yep.
Correct. And so he was an abolitionist who he did a siege of
Harper's Ferry.
That's
goddamn nut.
Well, that was in Virginia too.
Present-day West Virginia, I believe. But yes, Virginia at the time.
But was he from Kansas, or was it supposed to? Am I mixing this all up?
A little bit. He was the leader of the abolitionist movement that believed in violent overthrow of slave states. So he went out to defend, I guess, if I recall, the pro-slavery people were raiding across state lines to undefended civilians, farmers.
Mm-hmm.
And
from Missouri,
yeah, from
Kansas,
Missouri,
trying to sway the popular sovereignty decision, trying to basically turn Kansas into a slave state, basically.
Right. So you had what they called Kansas Jayhawks were the ones that defended these people, and
Rock Chalk, Jayhawk, KU.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, and John Brown led like a guerrilla group that helped, and he was not. I don't think he was from that area, but he went out there with his sons, and they helped fortify the Kansas people, the civilians.
So I guess you could say that Bleeding Kansas was kind of the like a mini Civil War in itself.
Yes.
Yep. Think about it. Like it could have been like, you could say the Civil War started during Bleeding Kansas.
Sure.
If you really wanted to.
Yeah. Yeah. You could consider definitely a prelude to the Civil War. When you were talking about
fighting,
Yeah. With Harper's Ferry, that was basically this guy, John Brown, basically tried to lead a slave revolt.
Slave revolt.
Rebellion.
I believe he was stealing. So he broke into an armory. I believe it was a Union armory, right? Because it was obviously part of the Civil War.
Yeah,
so he broke into basically a U.S. armory, took it over, tried to arm all the slaves that were around it, and it didn't work.
He was a terrible general and a terrible leader, and everybody that he led basically got killed in that effort.
Right.
But he was very passionate. And if you ever noticed, you ever see any? I don't know of any real pictures, but you see how he's portrayed in paintings, almost like a Moses type of figure.
Yep.
You know, he's
The
got like
big
the
beard
flowing
and
white
the-
hair,
yep.
the beard.
Big beard, right? Yeah.
Fun fact:
really
Colonel Robert E. Lee is the one who ended up beating him. Who got him arrested?
Really?
Yep. Union Colonel Robert E. Lee at the time.
Correct. Because he lived right there and right off of Washington. You know,
Right.
which is now Arlington National Cemetery.
So that's
John
going on.
Brown, born in Torrington, Connecticut.
Look at that.
Ooh.
Did you really?
Stay away
Torrington,
from that side of the
Connecticut.
state. Nothing good on the western side of Connecticut. I've always said that.
Facts.
So you have that going on. You have obviously bloody Kansas, essentially a mini civil war taking place. Influencers on both sides coming in. Really sounds a little bit similar, obviously, with less violence today. It sounds a little bit similar with influencers coming in and extremists on both sides trying to influence what's going on. In the state, and again, it's states' choice. It's like there's states' choice for today. Things like the election, balloting, all that stuff that's going on. So that's going on.
Civilians forming militias. That's the
Right.
big one. It was
Right.
militias,
At a time where militias were a little bit more accepted, even.
Yeah.
The 1850s, there was still a need for militias. Some might
Well, yeah,
argue
because
at
there was
that
still
time.
half the continent was unconquered, I suppose. At this
Correct.
Right.
point.
Yeah,
Americans
Kansas
up
is-
there.
Kansas was still a new territory, and it's basically going to become a new state, and it was in the middle of the country.
But what's interesting
I believe
too is
California was in, but that was really it. I mean, between Kansas, Missouri to the West Coast to California, there's all territories, no states yet.
But the interesting thing too is if you look ahead, there wasn't a lot. There was some, but there was not a lot of armed clashes between Confederate troops and Union troops there, because I think the horrors, the bloody militia battles were so bad that the wars were pretty much to the east. There were some, but a lot of the ones that came out of there, you had the Red Legs of the Jayhawks of Kansas, and you had the I forgot what they called the Missouri. I forgot what they were called, but a lot of those guys ended up becoming the gunfighters and outlaws of like the 1870s.
Yep, after the war.
The James, after the war, the James brothers,
James
the Youngers, they're all got their training with these Kansas and Missouri raiding parties, they were brutal.
Right. So that's going on throughout the 1850s in Kansas. Again, it's a mini civil war over the idea of popular sovereignty, states' rights, picking if they want slavery, if they don't want slavery. Right around the same time, you have the Dred Scott decision, 1857, in the state of Illinois, which is where the Lincoln-Douglas debates will take place. Obviously, Lincoln being from Illinois. Stephen Douglas, called Frederick Douglass, Stephen Douglas as well. So the Dred Scott decision, 1857. Dred Scott was a slave living in a free state. Being a slave in a free state, and essentially,
slave.
What's that?
Well, no, because
He was a fugitive
his owner had moved to Illinois.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So his argument
wasn't-
was
Oh wait, then he wasn't a fugitive.
no,
he
he was
wasn't.
not. No, he was
He wasn't.
so his argument was, my owner moved to a free state where there's no slavery. Am I free? Like, shouldn't I be free since I'm a slave in a state that doesn't have slavery? And so it went through all the steps of the government, and it came down to the Supreme Court. Justice Roger B. Taney had the decision that basically said, no, like, your property, if anywhere you go, you are property for the betterment of yourself, by the way. He made it basically say, if you're a slave, it's for your own good. It was a very, 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 I'd say hindsight being 2020, I probably wouldn't have, signed off on that. But it basically made it so that if you are African American anywhere in the country, you can still be a slave.
So again, that goes all the way to the Supreme Court, which essentially, as we've seen today with things like gay marriage, for example, that was a state-by-state issue. When the Supreme Court decided that it essentially was not a state-by-state issue, that without legalizing it federally, essentially legalized gay marriage federally. You see the same thing here. So regardless of the free state or slave state, this Supreme Court ruling with Dred Scott in 1857. I was on such a good run. God damn it! All right,
that's a good one. Keep going. That's a good one.
So the Dred Scott decision basically got rid of the whole popular sovereignty idea, got rid of there are free states and there are slave states, basically made it that if you owned slaves, you could bring your property into any state. Free, slave, didn't matter. Yeah. So the Dred Scott decision is going to kind of elevate what's already obviously an extremely tense situation with bloody Kansas going on as well. The Supreme Court decision by Dred Scott, or with the Dred Scott, is going to get national news, and it's really going to lay the foundation for the Lincoln-Douglas debates that will take start in 1858, leading up to the election
hosted by Chris Wallace, by the way.
Right, yeah. That Lincoln obviously wins. Yeah. Yep.
Can I ask though, because I don't know offhand, I don't want to look it up. What if you had your emancipation papers? What if your owner
doesn't matter?
You still could be
according to the Chief Justice, the Jets fan, he said that if you are a slave, if you are African American, that for the betterment of yourself, you should be a slave.
Wow. Now, did that apply to freed slaves?
Yeah, I got my papers.
It didn't even matter. He said anything that if you are African American, for the betterment of yourself, because you are subhuman, you should be a slave.
So that's even more extreme than I thought. I thought it was basically if you were a slave. So even if you were a freed slave, you were screwed too.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and that was the problem. Is that now, or the thought was now that even if you're in the North, you could still be a slave.
Yeah,
and
resold.
Right.
Think of it this way too, because you can get a slave catcher. You could be you could be a slave catcher and come up from the South. You can grab a black guy who's been
the runaway slave act or whoever that was.
Yeah, and then you can bring him south and resell him. Yeah, fugitive slave act, and you can resell him. So it's all for the money. Think about it.
Well, yeah,
it's all for the money,
right? So that's going to elevate tensions even more then, because if people that have been abolitionists, other groups that have been fighting for freedom for all slaves, really that's a big punch in the gut, because all the work that had been going on with the free states, with the former slaves that had been emancipated already, basically that Supreme Court ruling undid all of that, which almost you could say really laid the groundwork for the need for a civil war, at least from the Union perspective, and then the need for the constitutional amendments to essentially overturn the Supreme Court decision.
Yep. Right? So I have a good quote from the Dred Scott thing. It says that they, African Americans, had been for more than a century been regarded as beings of an inferior order, and so far inferior that they had no rights which the white man was bound to respect, and that the Negro might justly and lawfully be reduced to slavery for his benefit. Wow. That's a direct quote from your Chief Justice.
Yeah.
Your Jets fan.
Mm-hmm. Jesus Christ.
Sad.
Right?
Sad.
Yep. It's a bad day for the Jets.
So I'd
be interested to read the dissenting opinion too, because there are only 6 back then. There were only 6 justices, right? It was Roosevelt who packed the court with 9, but there were 6 justices back then. So I'd wonder if because you always hear about this, but you never hear about the dissenting opinion like you do now, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm not seeing a block quote like there was for the.
That was mine. Sorry. Did you guys hear my dog?
Yeah, your dog's awesome, by the way. It's a plot hound.
Yeah.
What's his name? I've been to ask you.
Norman.
Oh, what a name!
Oh, what a great name! What a great name for a plot hound. I've seen pictures of his its tongue. He's like, I fucking love it.
He's as heavy as my wife. My wife's like 4 pounds, and he's about 100 pounds.
Anyways, Dred Scott.
Yeah. So as you're saying, basically,
Norman
Scott, you can't sue if you're not a citizen. Basically, was part of the decision. Scott wasn't a citizen, so obviously no rights in court. Yep,
about the money.
Obviously the money.
Right, white man keeps his money.
Yep. You had property couldn't be taken away. He cited it was a violation of the Fifth Amendment. So the fact that he cited an amendment in the decision itself almost made it necessary for there to be an amendment to get rid of slavery in the future.
Yeah.
Because you can just keep citing that Fifth Amendment, and the only way to change the Constitution is to add an amendment. So that's where the need, really that kind of lays the groundwork for the need for the 13th, 14th, and then 15th Amendments, immediately following the Civil War. Mm-hmm. But I'm sure we'll get to that at some point. So obviously not be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law only applies to citizens of the state or the country, not property itself, which was part of the Dred Scott decision as well.
Which by then would have been only 18-year-old white men and above. Or
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah. Was it
Is it
18 at the time?
landowning
It must have
still
been
at
18
that
at the
point?
time.
Was it 18 or 21? But
Were they landowning at that
or
point?
landowning?
Yeah, property owning white men. Yeah.
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 But just still that even that late. Wow.
So that stays until the I believe it was the 15th Amendment with the right to vote for African American. That's where the property gets taken out.
Yeah.
Because
Right.
it wouldn't be because you didn't have many African Americans owning property after the Civil War, right? So that's where that part gets taken out in the 15th Amendment.
Oh, interesting.
Yep.
What's that?
So the debate. So the debates were like. Also. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. What did I say? Don't want to go down a rabbit hole. No, I was just going to say, like, so the Lincoln Douglas debates for the, it was Douglas was the sitting senator. I think he was going for his third term, and back then, all states voted for senators from the state legislature.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
So even those property owning white guys couldn't really vote either.
Mm-hmm.
So so they're really courting the vote of the state legislature.
Yeah, so that was the point of the debates was for those state legislature elections, not for those senatorial elections.
And they went to each district. There were supposed to be 9 debates. I think they only did 7, but there were 9 districts. Yeah, there were 9 districts, so they didn't get to the last 2.
They each did like their own speeches in Chicago, and I can't remember what the other one.
Yeah,
and they decided to do a combined debate in the other 7 districts.
Right.
Yep. So we have Stephen Douglas, a sitting senator who was a Democrat, but he wasn't very well liked in the Democrat Party. He was pro, and he was also a Jetsman, which is strange.
That's why he wasn't very well liked.
Makes sense. I get it.
So he wasn't very well liked, even his own party. He wasn't trusted. He was basically for popular sovereignty, for basically letting states choose if they want to be free or slave states, which went against most of his party, because most of his party, were in slave states. At the time, the Democrats were mostly southern states, and the Republicans, or the soon-to-be Republican Party, was mostly in the northern states, and then spreading out west as well. So Douglas was kind of an outlier in the Democrat Party, I'd say.
Well, he was also the negotiator. He was because he had to be the mediator representing the Democrats with the Whigs.
Right.
Back then
they were also trying to poach him.
And I'm also not sure
he didn't agree with Buchanan on God, I forget the name of the legislation, but the Republicans were trying to poach him.
Yep.
So they thought that there was a reasonable chance that he could turn over to their side. So.
And I'm not sure you necessarily call him an outlier in the Democratic Party, because during this time the Democratic Party was really splitting between Northern Democrats and Southern Democrats who supported slavery and those who didn't. So he was just more considered just a Northern Democrat who supported popular sovereignty to decide slavery, rather than the Dred Scott decision that said slavery can be wherever the hell you want it to be.
Right. So that's where you can kind of start to see the Democrat Party will start to split a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where someone like Stephen Douglas will basically, as R.A. was saying, try to get poached by the Republicans, who also didn't trust him. He especially was kind of on an island by himself, which will lead into the Lincoln Douglas debates themselves. So Lincoln is essentially challenging Douglas for the Senate seat in the elections of or during the 1858. 2 years before the 1860 presidential election that Lincoln will eventually win. So I want to start. We can get into the discussion about the debates themselves. I just want to start with a quick quote from Lincoln. This is from one of the debates. He says, "I believe this government cannot endure permanently, half slave and half free. I do not expect the Union to be dissolved. I do expect the house to fall, but I do not expect it will be divided. It will become all one thing or all the other." So he's already kind of laying out
a house divided. What is it? A house divided against itself cannot stand.
Cannot stand.
Yep. House divided cannot stand.
Yep.
So with that, we lead into the discussion of the Lincoln Douglas debates themselves. All right, you wanna jump on it?
So the format was, we said there was 7 debates. 4 of them. So since Douglas was the incumbent, he got to go first on 4 of them.
Right.
It went. The first person talked for an hour. The second person had an hour and a half rebuttal, and the third, and then the person who spoke first had a 30-minute rebuttal. So it was 3 hours, and they talked for 21 hours total. And they all took turns. No one interrupted each other. They were, very civil. Mike Wallace knew what he was doing. And yeah, I don't know. Like I watched some of the so the what they just talked about the whole time, more or less, for 21 hours was popular sovereignty or abolition, more or less. I mean, the
Right.
content, it varies, but it really put Lincoln on the map. Lincoln was the one who was able to get all of them published after the fact. It was very big for the time. All the newspapers had, correspondence there. Like it was actually published nationally. And what they would do was the people who were pro Douglas, and when they were handed the transcripts, they would keep the Lincoln ones verbatim, the ones with all the errors and stuff like that. And they would kind of paraphrase Douglas and then vice versa for Lincoln. But, it really boosted Lincoln to the top because, like I said, he did get those all published, and obviously he came out looking better than Stephen Douglas. From what I've heard, it was kind of like a 2-2 tie, and then they kind of just like the other three were a draw. But so I was watching, I guess in 1994, C-SPAN decided to do a reenactment of them all, and that just seemed like the most boring thing in the world for me. I can't imagine sitting there for 3 hours listening to two people talk about the same thing, like over and over and over.
We were talking about a little bit before the show.
Terrible.
I mean, that was their entertainment, though.
Yeah, that's awful. Who is?
They didn't have a 3-hour podcast.
What is that?
Who's that?
Who's got the 5-0 on their tail?
I live right next to the hospital, so that's just an ambulance. Like the hospital's across the street. So
really zeroing in your location there. Awesome.
Whatever.
By a hospital in New London. Interesting.
Yep.
If we haven't bored everybody enough already, we're going to continue to bore them because I'd like to see that C-SPAN.
Yo, it's bad.
Well, I can only imagine because
bad.
I've not read it verbatim, right? But you read like synopsis of them in school and in college.
Mm-hmm.
But I can only imagine that you're debating the same guy for 21 hours over 7 different locations with time in between to hone your argument, to pair it. It must have been pretty freaking intense.
Very
pretty
limited
good.
notes too, is what they said.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Like he had it all. You can't talk off notes for an hour and a half.
Correct.
Right.
So,
and I guess what they would do is they would be in attendance for like Austin had said, they were in Chicago and did 2 separate speeches or whatever like that. And then whoever went first would just critique the guy's Chicago speech.
Mm-hmm.
So you talk about the exact same thing for, I'd say easily 30 hours.
And I don't get how it didn't get repetitive though.
But it did. That's like you were saying. I would go mad.
Like
just sitting there. I just
like wait.
I guess like you were saying, like that's all they had. But
right.
But that's
just. But then again,
I mean, I don't think there were groupies going around like watching the.
I don't know, man.
Ones.
There were one of the debates they had between 5,000 and 10,000 people.
Oh, I saw 10 and 15.
Yeah, like
I mean, people that go for like that. How they went to multiple debates.
Oh, like deadheads and stuff.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Like you said, this is their entertainment. They
what else are they gonna do?
They came from other states.
Read the Bible.
They put the entire 3-hour speech in the newspaper, and people would read the entire.
Oh
thing.
They print it all out.
Like I don't see why people wouldn't go to multiple ones. They want to see the entire thing play itself out.
To be fair, in 150 years, people are going to look back at us and who listen to 3-hour podcasts every day and call us crazy too. So
I don't know. I mean, it's not about the same thing every single.
I guess that's true. I've been listening to like a repeat episode, although that's also happened as well. Go back and listen to old episodes. But so I guess the debates themselves. Lincoln came out looking better. It sets him up for the presidential run in 1860, which he wins. Buchanan, he defeats Buchanan from the South, who obviously he was pro-slave.
Breckinridge.
Breckinridge
ran. James Buchanan was a little light in the loafers, by the way. Not Miller Fillmore.
I heard that.
Bachelor president had his daughter as the first lady.
Can we edit that 2409? We better pull it out late in the loafers.
What?
Yeah, mark that, producer. All right.
Mark that, producer. All right.
Yeah, okay. I fucking bet.
He was a bachelor, RA.
Unedited, raw history buffs.
There we go.
Yeah. So it sets Lincoln up, and I believe Douglas runs as well, doesn't he? Doesn't Douglas run in 1860?
He did, but he didn't get. I don't think he got any
He didn't.
No,
he didn't get.
So let's backtrack a little bit. So 1858, a lawyer from he was from Springfield, so a big town in Illinois, not Chicago,
and also a former congressional rep.
Correct. A former
Get a-
congressman.
get a-
That's
get a
exactly
term
right.
in Congress.
Let's
yeah.
see. A term in Congress, former lawyer, believes in strong central government, and the press loved him. He was like the 1858 Obama. And he came out of nowhere and became president 2 years later.
Yep.
That's a good comparison.
Yeah.
I never thought of that.
Mhm.
So when the today's right wing always says, yeah, the Republicans, the land anti-slavery. Okay, but they're also for a very strong federal central government which controlled everything and took away popular sovereignty, which is against what the Republican Party stands for today.
Oh,
Right.
they've absolutely flip flopped, and
Yeah, they all have. That's why that whole thing is a bunch of nonsense.
yeah,
Yeah,
it's a bunch of malarkey.
the party that freed the slaves, right?
Malarkey. Or what? Yeah, right.
back
Well, okay, technically,
Which
yes,
technically true, but I
of
mean,
course,
the parties have flip flopped multiple times since then.
correct.
Oh, absolutely.
Multiple.
You had the Dixiecrats and much later
yeah.
on. And
Yeah,
exactly.
against civil rights. Yep.
You're currently seeing a flip in ideologies in the parties right now. I mean, throughout
Yes.
the entire 20th century, the Republicans were much more pro censorship and censoring your freedom of speech, and now the Democrats are way more into censoring who can say what. If you on Twitter and Facebook, if you say something that they don't agree with, they'll censor you. They put on Trump's.
Oh yeah,
They
I
put
sent that
disclaimers
to
at
you
the
other day.
They
bottom.
put the disclaimers on everything
Yeah.
now, and
Well, where is Tim and Ken to say it? Go ahead, all right, say it. Commie pukes.
Commie pukes.
Bastards.
Commie pukes.
Yeah.
I hate them. I hate them. And I stink.
I'd line them up against the wall and I'd shoot them.
The only good commie is a dead commie.
But at this point, though, the Republican Party was a fledgling party. It was brand new. And the Whigs, and it broke away really from the Whigs. Which imagine being, hey, are you a Democrat or are you a Whig? I'd be like, okay, a Whig, really? Yeah. So they had to, that name had to go. That and like the Know Nothing Party. Those two are the two joke party names. So Republicans, had him as on the abolitionist platform. To be honest, that's how he ran. Even though I don't. Was Lincoln technically an abolitionist?
I think
can you be anti-slavery without being an abolitionist?
Said he wasn't on record a couple times.
Technically wasn't.
But
his idea was just like let them do whatever they wanted, like just to keep it in the South, right? Like, wasn't that his?
I think that was his first. Yes, I think that
was his
he didn't want to expand. He didn't want to expand, which is
right.
But that scared the South enough to go to war, though.
Correct.
Because they figured if it didn't expand, they were getting basically like the noose tightened around their neck.
Over tariffs.
I mean, that's why you had the Missouri Compromise in 1820 to put Maine as a free state and Missouri as a slave state. I think that was a big deal during the Lincoln-Douglas debates with popular sovereignty. Is if you were going to allow the states to choose whether or not they wanted to be a slave state or not, I think you'd have both the North and the South just sending people over there.
That's what they did in Kansas.
That's what they did.
That's exactly
what they did in Kansas. And so realistically, it wasn't the people of that territory that were deciding whether or not they want slavery. You're having the people of other territories, called the North and the South, deciding for them, so that they can maintain power. It didn't matter what you did; they were on a collision course for civil war, no matter what.
Yeah, weird. People flooding into areas from out of town trying to influence certain things.
Yep.
Hey,
fun fact: Massachusetts didn't want to give up the territory of Maine in 1820, but were forced to because there was no northern territory to offset the admission of Missouri. Just thought I'd let you guys know that.
It's a fun fact.
Is that why I got given up? I knew
that's why they carved
used
out.
to be part of Massachusetts. Yeah.
So I knew that. I didn't realize it was forced to be.
It was kind of like a, hey, look, we need this. There was always they always wanted to break away, and Massachusetts always said no. And then I guess in Washington they said, hey, look, we need you to let Maine go. So that's why you have Yarmouth and New Yarmouth, and there was one Yarmouth in Massachusetts and a New Yarmouth in Maine because. Sorry.
No, that's fine.
Right.
Fun fact
on the Cape.
So
there we go.
Wrapping up the Lincoln-Douglas debates here, Austin, do you want to talk about the Freeport Doctrine a little bit?
Yeah, I mean that was just it was Douglas. Lincoln put Douglas in a really tricky situation. He basically made him either say, I support the Dred Scott decision or I support popular sovereignty. And because he was a Democrat and he needed the support of Southern Democrats for the 1860 election.
Right.
He really screwed Douglas here, and Douglas said he supported popular sovereignty, which the South didn't support. They supported the Dred Scott decision, which basically said you can have slavery wherever you want.
Right.
Yeah.
And so that was a big reason probably why Douglas didn't do well in the 1860 election.
And that's why the timeline's so important too, because if these debates were before the Dred Scott decision, he could have said popular sovereignty and it wouldn't have been a big deal. That had been his stance. That stance had been known. But after the Dred Scott decision in 1858, that actually gives the South almost like an out to continue to hopefully expand and grow slavery in their mind. Saying you're still for popular sovereignty is almost saying you don't want to be a part of at least the Southern Democrat Party anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah,
but Lincoln shouldn't skate on this completely, because his solution, like the new Green Deal, the Biden deal, his solution to once the slaves are free was to repatriate them back to Africa.
Yeah, he wanted to send them to Liberia.
Who's going to pay for that? Yeah, Liberia was already established.
Liberia's going to pay for it.
Colonize Africa.
Liberia's paying the bill.
Liberia's going to pick up the bill.
No, but that Liberia was already established for like a couple of decades as a
Monroe,
country.
The capital of Liberia, Monrovia.
Yep, Monrovia. Yeah,
as of James Monroe.
Really,
and it's
Swear
made
to
of
God.
all of look
at their
former
flag.
slaves. Yeah.
It's basically the U.S. flag.
It's basically the U.S. flag, correct. And we've had really tight relationships with them. That's why you notice that a lot of they have very favorable business laws where ships registries are like ocean vessels, or a lot of are registered in Liberia if they're made in the U.S.
Really? Yeah. I know nothing else about Liberia besides.
Yeah. Well,
Monrovia.
they didn't. Well, the idea didn't pan out, right? So because Lincoln was trying to like put together some sort of acceptable plan. I think he's a politician, right? But he was scrambling to try to appease everyone. So when they asked him, they tried to corner him. What's your idea? Once the slaves are free and we've got all these black people now as full citizens, what's your plan? What are we going to do with them? And he's like, we're going to send them back to Africa.
So that's when I'm in my readings for the Lincoln Douglas debates. He did bring that up, but he's like, realistically, this isn't a likely solution. Like, I don't think this is practical.
Yeah. I mean, again, you're speaking for 21 hours. You're going to say something. Shit, we say stupid stuff every episode here. I mean, you're going to say something stupid over.
I'm telling you, I would not be able to. Even if I was Lincoln or Douglas, I'd be like, all right, we get it. Like,
for me, it's the focus. Like, how can you focus for that long on speaking on one topic? I mean, I don't know. I'm a little ADHD.
When I saw the C-SPAN thing, I immediately thought of Trump being up there for like an hour and a half. Just like,
he could
rambling on about nothing.
He's a guy, and I did want to talk about the.
So we did try to tie this into the debates.
Well, I was going to say I did want to tie this into the debates a little bit. We don't have to get too deep into it. I know Net RA, you guys didn't really watch it, which is fine. I mean, there was not a lot of substance for anyone, obviously. But I think Trump is a guy who could actually stand up there for an hour, and you could almost do like improv with him, give him like just random topics to talk about. And I think he could do it.
Oh, I think he could.
You might be right, actually.
I don't know how coherent it would be. I don't know how informative it would be, but
no, obviously no, it'd be gibberish. But
Dred Scott decision, not a fan. Bad thing. Don't avow. Disavow.
Dred Scott, not good.
Not good.
Disavow Dred Scott.
But like before the show, we were talking about just the conduct during the Franklin Douglas, the Lincoln Douglas debates. Jesus, my bad.
Told you. Tough. Get you.
He's nervous over the game.
Yeah, I am. I mean,
no, nothing just by the way.
No, I want them to lose. If they lose, they fire Gase. But that's another thing. But in comparing the conduct of the other night between Biden and Trump, and just it was disgusting. I mean, you couldn't. I don't think anybody who is like a moderate, undecided voter could understand what either side's platform is to decide what they wanted. So I've read a few things that they're talking about giving the moderator a button to basically turn off the mics for the opposing side when someone's talking.
That's gonna be a disaster. Trump's gonna yell over it.
That'll be.
You're just gonna hear Trump.
I think it would be more distracting. I think you're right, because you'd hear him through Biden's mic. I think
you just hear him muffled. You just hear him yelling into nothing.
It won't be done. The problem is it no matter, and I think there's some left-leaning moderator this time, even worse than Wallace. But no matter who it is, you can't do it correctly. It's going to look unfair.
Because one side's going to say, every time it's going to be, oh, you were censoring him, and then the other side's going to say, no, he was jumping in out of his turn. It's just going to cause more issues.
That's my biggest complaint about it, whether or not you could. So I think Trump jumped in more often than he should have, but he felt that Wallace was not pushing back. Yeah, he was not pushing back on a lot of Biden's points. Like Biden said, like the Green New Deal isn't my deal, but if you look at his platform, a lot of his, the Biden deal is inspired and has a lot of Green New Deal topics. Wallace didn't follow up on that.
Yeah. And it's only going to be worse. So you're right. It's going to be. I don't know if the what do they call the mute button? I guess I don't know what they're going to call it.
Yeah. I don't know.
But, mute them.
Well, it's gonna be ugly. They do have to fix that because I didn't watch it just following it, and seeing the horror show that it was.
I don't think
I watched the first 15 and the last 15. I couldn't.
I stopped listening to it once I thought Trump botched the one question that matters to me, which is about the critical theory. Critical race theory. I thought he completely botched that question.
Yeah. Well, he didn't botch it. Well, yes, he did.
He did.
Wallace botched it by asking about
Wallace cheated.
Training. That's not
exactly.
What it is.
Yeah. He should have stopped it. He should have stopped that right there. This is not racial sensitivity training.
No, that should have been his canned. That should have been his canned answer. Is like you banned racial sensitivity training. Critical theory.
He didn't know what it is. He doesn't know what critical race theory is.
Who gives a shit? He should have guys that are preparing him for it. Who cares if he knows?
He doesn't. Okay, I mean,
he pays attention to those meetings.
Critical race theory, not good.
Not good. Bad.
Good.
So Lincoln Douglas.
So I think I
Douglas, not good guy, not good pro-slavery.
So I know he's a good guy. He's a good guy.
But I don't think any candidate could, maybe we could have an argument for Trump, but I don't think, let's go back. Clinton, Bush, Obama talk uninterrupted, without many notes, without teleprompters for 60 minutes on one topic. I don't think they
Yeah, that's the thing though. One topic.
You'd have to go farther back in history. I think people are too reliant on technology now. You'd have to go back, I don't know, maybe before FDR.
I still don't think so. I think you have to go further back.
I agree.
Yeah,
I didn't say FDR with the fireside chats. I mean, granted,
but those are quick, weren't they?
No,
he was reading notes. Well, they were
literally
chatting.
had nothing else. That was their entertainment for the week.
Right, and he's reading a script. Remember, it was on the radio. Like even Theodore Roosevelt talked for an hour, and he could talk. That guy could freaking.
And he got
talk,
shot.
He
got shot while talking for it, and then talked for another 2 hours.
Kept going.
Yep. With a
so I guess. I mean, at least that.
I love that
back,
story.
Yeah, at least Teddy
Can
Roosevelt.
we do Theodore? Can we do Theodore Roosevelt?
We'll do the life of Teddy at one point.
I love Theodore Roosevelt.
I like that.
Maybe, but that wasn't a debate. That was a speech. That was a campaign speech in 1912. Yeah. So I'm talking about in a debate scenario, you have one topic. I think it's gone.
No, because you were basically just giving a speech. You gave an hour-long speech. Right. Someone gave an hour-and-a-half-long speech. You gave a 30-minute speech.
For 30-minute rebuttal.
Well, because from the limited thing I saw on C-SPAN, I'm embarrassed to admit I didn't watch the whole 21 hours of it, but it did seem like they were just letting each other talk.
But then it seemed also after posts, and we'll jump ahead here, but off the top of anyone's heads, do we have any other debates for either major Senate seats or presidential debates until? No,
that's the thing. You don't hear a lot about Senate debates.
I guess Nixon, Kennedy, right?
That'd be the debate. That was the first televised
JFK one. Just owned him by using television.
Yeah.
So about 100 years, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's interesting.
110
years, right?
Yeah.
No, 102 years.
102.
58 and 60.
And then since 60, they've been pretty much a staple.
JFK ran laps around Nixon in those debates.
Well, they say that if you listen to the debates on the radio at the time, Nixon won.
Oh yeah, but if you look, Nixon just sits there and is just like,
he was doing this. He was looking at the camera.
And JFK sitting there all handsome, Marilyn Monroe's on his gun. He's just like, this is what's going to listen. If you're happy with the way things are going, vote Nixon. If you want change, I'm your guy. And everyone's just like, yes, Jack Kennedy.
But since then,
Kennedy.
They didn't do them in 64. They didn't do them in 68. They didn't do them in 72, but they did them in 76, Carter and Ford. So they didn't have presidential debates after Nixon Kennedy until I'm trying to recall. I don't recall any. Nixon did not debate. Well, go, you guys, you weren't alive for this one either, but I don't think Nixon debated Humphrey. I don't think Nixon debated McGovern. I don't think so. But I do know that Carter debated Ford in 76. because
saw
that
video
wasn't my
evidence of that,
format.
yep.
That I saw. And my parents went through the roof when Ford said Poland there is no iron curtain.
There is no sphere of influence.
And Carter goes, I think the people of Poland would.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure if you ask any like
It's a good
Czechoslovakian American or like Polish American, like I'm pretty
It's a good
sure
line.
they'd say that they're under, they're like Poland's an independent country. It's like,
And then Reagan, I think in 80, he had a debate, right? And then I know
he had the
did in
Mondale one.
He did in 84. And that was 84, definitely in 84.
Because that was the quip about not using age.
Right.
Or not using his youth and experience.
Right.
And I watched that clip and the moderator was dying laughing. Like everyone was. Mondale was cracking up.
No, it's as Steve Robinson said, it was that Reagan humor,
That's it. Funniest president. Although Trump might give him a run for his money, though. I'll tell you what. He got Wallace to laugh the other night.
Yeah.
I forget what he said.
How can you not? He's very entertaining.
I mean, he knows what he's doing.
So now that the question I think we should throw out there before we leave, before Austin has a meltdown, we're in the second quarter of the game. But
actually, I just had a live update. Hold on.
7-3 Jets.
7-3 Jets. Now he's going to want to.
Wow.
Yeah.
So maybe it's because you're not watching it. Probably.
Do we really need the debates anymore? Because we have had them kind of regularly as a staple in the presidential cycle, in the election cycle, right? And vice president debates. Now that I think about it.
We don't need.
So
that.
I learned after
not in the
half hour I listened to. I learned nothing.
Yeah.
Not in the current format. I don't think. You have cable news network anchors moderating the debates, and they're clearly biased on all their questions. I think if you had Joe Rogan host a debate where it's the free form conversation between Biden and Trump, and he can somehow manage it, have them not yell over each other.
I think the format makes Trump, or not, I guess not just makes people interrupt and act that way. If it was just like a conversation that's being kind of there's a list of questions that's free form, like loose flowing. I mean, Trump could go off on a 10-minute, 15-minute monologue if he wants to.
No.
There's no time.
Biden's going to keep interrupting.
That's kind of my point, though. Is that I think in the current format,
it's a conversation in that case. It's not an actual debate.
The current debate format is just not. It's no good anymore. It just
it doesn't work. And do you guys remember? You're all alive. Do you remember the 2000 debate between Bush and Gore? Did you?
2000. I was 4 years old. So
okay.
What's your story, Boomer?
So
close every week with Ned story time.
Bush. It was like last night. No. It was like last night. If Trump had not interrupted or deflected attention, we know that Biden would have rambled on into infinity and gone off, and he could have proven his point that the guy's old and
right.
And
he never let him get to that point.
In 2000, Bush was not. He's not a sharp guy, right?
Oh yeah.
And Gore was letting him ramble on, and which was smart. Let him talk himself into a hole, right? But while not being on camera, you kept hearing this. No. You kept hearing Gore underneath, like his mic was live, and he's like. I mean, he came off as such an asshole that I actually kind of like. Yeah, I didn't vote for either one of them because I'm like I was gonna vote for Gore at the time, and then I'm like he's an asshole because he's not letting the guy finish his thought, and if he does let the guy finish his thought, he's gonna come off as a dummy, which he kind of was, right?
Were you in Florida at the time?
Yeah,
I mean, you probably did vote for Bush anyway. You just didn't know it.
No, I think I voted for who's the guy? Who's the one? Fred? Who's the other guy?
Ralph Nader. Is he around there?
Green Party, yeah, it was Ralph Nader.
No, there was another guy. There was a guy who was a CNN host. Shit, I think he's still alive too, but he's retired. Because the ballot was sketchy. You really didn't line up across. It was a fold-out ballot. It was a very sketchy ballot. But I can't think of who it was. Shit, my mind just went blank. But he was considered a alt-right wing candidate, but he also had a CNN talk show. What the hell was his name?
Imagine if Trump's brother ran Florida and then the same exact thing happened.
Oh,
imagine what that would happen today.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Or like Biden's cousin was the governor of Florida or something like that.
Oh yeah.
Was it Pat Buchanan?
Pat Buchanan, thank you. So people were concerned that they voted for Pat Buchanan. And then Buchanan, to his credit, said, all those who votes that are for me, if you didn't vote for me, they shouldn't be counted. I don't want them. So yeah. So is the debate, going forward, the debates have to change. I don't mean these because they won't, but I mean, in 2024, they've got to have a new type of format.
Oh, so in the legislature, right? Going back to Lincoln Douglas, the Republicans won. They won the popular vote. And because of gerrymandering or whatever, I didn't really. But all they said was gerrymandering. Stephen Douglas was elected back into the Senate.
Right. Elected by the state,
by the legislature.
By
Yeah,
the legislature.
because like we said earlier, that's how they did it. Like you would vote for your state legislature, and then your state legislature would vote for your senator.
Senators didn't become elected by the people until 1913.
Yeah,
It was 1900. It was
Yeah,
all
it was
Seventeenth
early
Amendment.
1900s.
17th Amendment.
17th Amendment. 17th Amendment.
Yep.
So I think that's a good place to kind of wrap it up for now. So we're leaving off with Lincoln does not win. Obviously, as we just said, the election of Illinois election of 1858, but the Lincoln Douglas debates will kind of catapult him into national fame. Honestly, I thought that was a great analogy by you, Ned, bringing up Obama. Very, very similar. New on the scene, runs for president while he has the momentum and gets it. So I think we'll kick off next episode with the election of 1860 and kind of talk about that and how that leads us pretty much right up to the Civil War, essentially.
Exactly.
So unless there's anything else.
No, until next time. I hope the Jets lose, but
until next time,
I do too.
Let's go Jets. Never forget.
Watch, subscribe, and like, please.
Yep. Leave a comment down below. Let us know what you think. Like, review, and subscribe.
Review, please.